We have the sad news of a couple of ex-councillors who have passed away this week. We will also have a minute's silence, but I have a few words to say regarding the two councillors. First one is Councillor Pat Barker, who from Forest Heath District Council. She was a former teacher at Great Heath School. She was elected to the Rose Ward in 1995 before standing down after just one term. She was a very active councillor during these 4 years, having served as chair of the council in 98-99 and sat on also several committees. This included being appointed vice chair of the Environment, Health and Amenities Committee. Another ex-councillor who probably many of us will know was Bob Cockle. I actually remember him being in a training meeting on licensing, and I found it very funny. Good sense of humour, and it was just a couple of times I'd met him, because I think we were at the time were coming together at St Edmunds and Forest Heath, so I did have the pleasure of meeting him. He represented the former Fornham Ward, and also then later on St Olave's until 2018, when he stepped down due to ill health. He was a bus driver, I believe, and would chair the Transport Committee, Licensing and Planning to 2012. I believe he was also the first mayor of Bury St Edmunds in 2007, and also mayor of St Edmundsbury in 2009. And he was lucky enough to welcome the Queen, who visited the town. Alongside his council work, he was serving the community for 23 years, and he will be fondly remembered for his cheeky personality, warmth and humour, and he will be missed by many, those that certainly knew him. If we could all please stand for a minute's silence. Thank you, everybody. If you'd like to be seated. Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the minutes. We have got two sets which we will take separately. Could I have a proposal, please, for the 21st of March? Councillor Whittam, thank you. And a seconder? Thank you. Anyone want to make any comments on those? No? That's great. Let's go to the vote then. All in favour? Any against? Abstain? No, thank you. Unanimous. Okay, now the minutes from the 23rd of May 2023. If I can have a proposer there. Councillor Buchanan. And a seconder. Councillor Whittam, thank you. Anyone want to make any comments on those? No? Okay, let's vote again, please. All in favour? Good. And against? Any abstentions? Thank you, all done. Okay, item number 2, Chair's announcements. What do I have? And obviously you've seen the list of things myself and Councillor Hammond have attended. I've also got to add to the list that on Sunday I had a lovely day down in Felixstowe. They had civic service down there, and the sun was shining, and it was a very nice occasion there. And today I went to one of my villages, Gazy. They have a community lunch, and I was treated to some very nice homemade food and cakes, and we had about 50 people there. For a small village like Gazy, it's great, but all the villages surrounding also my ward are invited along as well. So that was all very enjoyable. If I can announce, I'm sure you've all had the invites that I'm holding a civic service on Sunday the 16th of July in St Mary's Church, Kentford. I did really want it in my own area, so sorry that it's not the largest church, but I do hope as many of you are able to come along. There will be a reception afterwards opposite in the pub. The pub is called, they changed it to Kentford. I didn't agree with that. You should carry on with its original name, which was the Cock Inn, but there we go. I think, as you know, my charity this year is Our Special Friends, and I hope we can raise a lot of money for a really good cause. So thank you. Teresa, any apologies for absence? Item 3.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've received apologies for absence from Councillors Sarah Broughton, Mike Chester, Andy Drummond, Luke Halpin, Rachel Hood, Andrew Martin, Andy Neal, Sarah Pugh, Andrew Speed, Kevin Yarrow and Liz Smith. Secondly, Chair, 2 of the papers followed the agenda for this meeting. If members have not seen those, please raise their hands and we'll bring a printed copy to you.
Chair,
Sorry.
Councillor Tracy Whitehand gives her apologies.
Item 4, declarations of interest. Must remind members of their responsibility to declare any interest no later than when that agenda item is reached. Anyone would like to declare anything? What's on the agenda? No? Superb. Okay, now move to item 5, which is the leader's statement. Members may ask the leader any questions on the content of both his introductory remarks and his written statement itself. We've got 5 minutes each with a total of 30 minutes. I'd like to hand over to Councillor Waterman.
Did you get my name then, Roger?
Just for the second. I wanted to say Cliff, but I've got to be formal.
You can say Cliff. Okay, there was a bit of discussion about whether I would stand or sit. I've decided to sit because I think it's easier to hear using the microphones than standing. So hopefully you've read in the printed statement. I've just got a few other words to say. Just to remind everyone that tomorrow is Suffolk Day, and of course every day is Suffolk Day for us here. But it is a chance for us to reflect on the wonderful county we live in and champion not just West Suffolk, but the whole county. We've got thriving communities, unique environment, nationally important heritage and history, as well as innovative businesses. There are going to be a range of events in West Suffolk and across the county. Our very own Apex is working with Suffolk County Council on Make Music Suffolk Day, involving a concert with local pupils from across the district and county. There'll also be live performances of various groups and performers in Bury St Edmunds, supported by the BID. It's part of an international event. I should have probably declared an interest there because my wife's playing one of those bands. So if you see a sax band playing, one of those people is my wife. There's so much to enjoy at a visit across West Suffolk from Newmarket, the international capital for horse racing, something we should be very proud of, to Haverhill, whose art centre is supporting Mutiny in Colour, and all the other things they do there. Wonderful parks, unique landscape and history, such as in Clare, Brandon Country Park, and the forest walks around Mildenhall, perhaps even stopping for a cake at the hub, if that takes your fancy as you're in Mildenhall. So as I say, Suffolk Day does act as a reminder of the wonderful county we're all very lucky to live in. An invitation to everybody. I'm very pleased to be part of a partnership in this new administration that's working together on ambitions to protect our environment, grow our business, tackle the cost of living through our families and community work, and help support the right housing provision. We serve all in West Suffolk, and it's only through working together and having a better understanding of the opportunities and challenges in the various locations that we will be able to do that properly. So I'm asking you, as councillors, to please take up my offer to invite me to come and meet you in your ward and be shown around and have the good things and perhaps also the things that need extra work doing on them highlighted. Please email me or Sophie Curley, who's my PA, to invite me to visit. The only thing I will say is that at the moment my diary is fairly chock-a-block, as you can imagine, so it might be a few weeks before we get that programme up and running, but I'm determined that I will come out and visit every ward over the course of the next year or so, with your help. I'll move on to Cabinet. We had our first Cabinet meeting last week, and as part of opening up democracy in West Suffolk, we are now having Cabinet meetings, some of them in Bury St Edmunds and some of them in Mildenhall. Unfortunately, at the moment, we can't have full council meetings in Mildenhall because we don't have a room big enough, basically. But I think it is important that we don't become too Bury-centric, that we do recognise the whole of West Suffolk, and it is a very diverse and a pretty large district. Thanks very much to all those people who attended Cabinet. There were some very challenging questions, which were very welcome. And one in particular was about gender balance in the Cabinet. And believe me, I would like to see better gender balance. I think the council, as we are, we're going to be pretty much barring by-elections as we are today, going forward for the next 4 years. I actually would like to frame this question more as a question of diversity, because it's not just gender balance, but we also need to make the council more open to a diverse range of people. And there are challenges people have in taking up roles as councillors, and even standing, but then also taking on a bigger role. And as you all know, portfolio is a big role to take on. So we will be working on ways that we can enable people to take on those roles without causing problems for their own personal lives. And I would like to say across the room, and I include all 64 councillors in this, we have an enormously talented and varied range of people, and I think that the people of West Suffolk can be very pleased at the range and the quality of councillors we have. So thank you very much. One thing we did do, which is very important in Cabinet, was to set up the Environment and Sustainability Working Group. And I think I was very pleased that was the first major thing we did as a council, as an administration. And it signals really our ambitions in tackling climate change. A good start was made by the previous council, but we want to develop on that and take it further forward. So once again, I would like to invite as many people as possible to take part in that and to make submissions to that. Moving on now to growth. We have a young traders market, and I was very pleased to see Haverhill and Bury St Edmunds proudly hosting the local heats of the young traders market. I'm sure you'll join me in congratulating the winners and wishing them luck in the heats to come, but also, of course, everyone who took part. This exciting event has provided an exceptional platform for young people under the age of 30 to showcase their talents, to build confidence, and to develop those essential business skills. And it demonstrates, I think, what a thriving and innovative business community we have here. And by supporting these initiatives, we will continue to do our part to grow the local economy. And I think we'd all agree that locally grown economic activity is what we need to power our local communities. I'd like to move on as well to the Jobs and Skills Fair. While I'm talking about growth, the West Suffolk Council and the Department for Work and Pensions are collaborating to host an empowering Jobs and Skills Fair. This event will take place on Tuesday, the 4th of July from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. At Haverhill Arts Centre. designed to engage individuals and connect them with a range of opportunity, this fair provides a resource for job seekers and those looking to upskill. And again, I think we're all aware that as a district, West Suffolk has a relatively low skill base, so anything we can do to raise that, I think, is vitally important. And the final thing, well, not quite the final thing, but nearly final thing, is Mutiny in Colour. Mutiny in Colour. It's an internationally important contemporary art exhibition involving, including works from Banksy and Tracy Emin and the guy with the shark, whose name for the moment has escaped me. Damien Hirst, thank you. And I would thoroughly recommend anyone who hasn't been to see that to go and see it. It really is very worthwhile, and I found it both challenging and also kind of amusing as well, so it's entertaining. I would very much recommend that. Armed Forces Week, as hopefully everyone knows, I'd like to thank our Chair and Vice Chair for helping raise the Armed Forces flag this week, for Armed Forces Week, and a reminder of our pledge to the military covenant. West Suffolk historically and currently is the home to members and families of the Armed Forces, and so it's particularly apt that we do mark this occasion with our friends and neighbours in mind. And finally, sigh of relief all round. Finally, engagement is vital, and I continue to meet with our partners and our organisations, more widely than Suffolk and West Suffolk, as we develop our priorities and gain first-hand understanding of the opportunities and challenges we all face. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wadsworth. Anyone have any questions for the leader? Councillor Clark.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Waterman for setting out his priorities in his first leader's statement. We have been all waiting with anticipation to see what bold, brave new direction this council is to be taken in. So what do we actually have? Housing, climate growth and the cost of living. Well, I don't think too many of us will disagree with those priorities, but it does feel a little bit like motherhood and apple pie. We need a little bit more substance, and I appreciate it's new to the job, but we will be calling for an action plan to underpin these. Because the Labour leaflets that were posted around Haverhill, for example, were calling on more GPs, calling for roads to be repaired. Again, both of them not within the gift of this council, but it would appear that when you look at these priorities, they effectively boil down to more lobbying. And of course, lobbying is an important aspect of the work that we do. But unfortunately, you need the context within government and you need the experience to do that. And I'm not sure how well placed you are at the moment for that. But the other issue that crossed my mind when I read the priorities is they seem to lack the priorities that I understood were important to the independent members on your side. Where is the street lighting for Forest Heath? I would have thought that this would have been at the top of the agenda, along with a plan to challenge the stone curlews around Brandon. Both of these priorities, to be fair, have never been far from the lips of Victor since he's been a councillor, and I just think it's been missed off for some reason, and I would expect to see more in that area. And don't forget, Victor, if you don't make any progress, my door is open to you. You know that. What we can support wholeheartedly, of course, is the call for debate, not hate. The keyboard warriors are a menace, and we must all come together to protect each other as well as the public, and whatever help I can give in that area, I'm always happy to do so. So the leader statement is a starter for 10. It feels a bit of a 3 out of 10 CV, but I'm looking for improvements in the future. Thank you.
I think it's a bit harsh, 3 out of 10. I would hope for 5 out of 10, but Nick, that's your privilege. So priorities, yes, we have set out bold, we have set out rather broad priorities, and we have got a programme of member development in which we will develop our policies in more detail. I'm afraid you will have to wait for that. We're not going to rush into hastily enacting things that perhaps don't unravel, but I do very much welcome your offer to work with us on that, so thank you very much for that. GPs and roads, yes, lobbying is very important, absolutely, and we are an outward-looking council. We will be working with others. For example, on Friday, we're having a meeting of the Suffolk public leaders, which involves Suffolk County, the leader of Suffolk County Council, the Police and Crime Commissioner, the leader of the Borough Council, which are the 4 district councils. And so that's one of the forums through which we can do work across the county, but also, of course, in West Suffolk. So be reassured that we are reaching out. As far as street lighting is concerned, we have got a process of reviewing that, and that is taking time. It does seem to be a problem that needs, and I'm sure Victor will agree with me on this, that needs unravelling carefully. Yeah. We don't want to fall down any pitfalls that might be there for us. But we will unravel that, and we will get it sorted out. Believe me, that's a priority. As for Stone Curlews, Victor has the honour, I think that's the right word, of meeting Matt Hancock, MP for West Suffolk, who is going to be asking to lobby Natural England and Parliament to help move that on. It is a sticky problem. We do need to sort it. We will sort it out. And finally, I'm very glad for your support for debate, not hate. I think my experience of this council has always been that it's been a safe place where we can talk things through, where we can debate things without it becoming personal. And I'm very glad that you're happy to continue with that, because I am as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Chair. Would the leader agree with me that the leader's statement was a good opportunity for instilling confidence across the chamber and across communities, that families and communities remains a priority for this council, as well as an opportunity to encourage new members to engage positively with their communities? For me, sadly, the leader's statement fails to do this, with opportunities missed to instil the confidence needed with this new administration, with a worrying lack of detail on specific issues. No mention of the families and communities approach. Is it business as normal? I have local organisations contacting me, and I'm busy with my first grant applications. In this first statement, could you not have reassured and encouraged the existing and new members to find those organisations that do so much good in our communities and desperately need locality grant support? No discussion of current consultations on public space protection orders and community impact assessments, encouraging members to speak proactively with their communities on these. The leader speaks of the cost of living crisis and moral imperative, yet the solution offered is to put more effort into our work with local partners and lobby MPs and government. We would all rather food barriers didn't exist, but they are here, and I value tremendously the excellent work that they do. You can say that. But VSO is a stretched time. I've just met with Reach in Hayville, and it's clear that VSOs, what they need is not West Suffolk giving them more work. They need support. I don't think any VSO reading this statement will interpret this overly simplistic statement positively. Nationally, 19 billion of unclaimed benefits unclaimed, 7.5 billion of universal credit unclaimed, 2.8 billion of local council tax support unclaimed, social tariffs underclaimed. Our communities need proposals put forward sooner rather than later. There are measures right now the Council could explore, but it needs decisive direction from the leader, not well-intended and somewhat vague words. I was disappointed that at Cabinet the leader said that more information would be provided in the coming months. So taking into account the summer recess, does that mean September, October? As I've stated above, it's possible to include more detail and direction in a leader's statement. Can you or Councillor Higgins give members, and by extension the wider community, the confidence that policy decisions are not going to be delayed? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mason. I welcome your stress, your emphasis on families and communities. Believe me, there is a lot of work going in to dealing with those things, and I very much welcome your emphasis on ward councillors working with the local community and voluntary organisations in the communities. And rest assured that we are going to continue the grants working party, and that will be meeting very shortly. As far as public protection orders go, yes, we are working on those, and we have a consultation out at the moment. I'm very interested in your comments about benefits not being claimed, and I agree with you, that is a national scandal. It is something that was brought up at County Council, I believe, a short while ago, although County Council agreed not to, or rather agreed not to pursue that. It is something I'm actively pursuing with Suffolk County leaders, so all I can say about this moment, as I say, we haven't had our first meeting yet, it's on Friday. All I can say about that is watch this space. I don't know, Councillor Higgins, did you want to say something about that, or would you rather not at this moment, about the families and communities? It's your option if you'd like to. Oh, that's super.
Are we ready? Okay, yeah, I mean, I think the point about family and communities is it's not a specific department. It is everything that we do. Every single part of this council is about families and communities. It's a jigsaw. So actually putting that into one statement that can be just delivered is going to, you know, that's not going to be possible. I hope that you are prepared to let us develop and find ways to communicate to you how we see that coming together as a whole. I don't think it's ever going to be in one snippet, but it's a bite-sized piece.
Thank you. Councillor Stan.
Thank you. Firstly, Cliff, can I call you Cliff? Firstly, I really support your comments about equality and diversity. It's really important that we, as a council, work together, and I hope that we, cross-party, can do that to encourage diversity across this chamber and encourage people to stand as councillors. On that point, I've got two sort of slightly different questions. Debate, not hate. I'd just like a little bit more meat on the bones. What does it actually mean, and in real terms, how are we going to look at delivering that? I thoroughly support it. Keyboard warriors are terrible, and none of us should expect to suffer at their hands, that's for sure. But my main question is really around the minutes of the last meeting of the council, page 11. Cliff, you were described as the leader of the Progressive Alliance grouping, but I noticed that the members' bulletin that came out last week seemed to say that there's been a change in leadership of that group and that David Smith is now the group leader. And I was just a bit confused by that. So, could I have some clarity? The leader of the council historically has been the leader of the largest group. Unfortunately for us, that isn't the case this time. We are where we are. But could you just clarify, possibly, who's leader of what? Because I'm just a bit confused. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks very much, Sarah. Please do call me Cliff. As other members may not realise, we both of us serve on Bury Town Council, so we get to know each other fairly well, I suppose. Thank you very much for your support for Debate Not Hate. We will be bringing forward a programme of training for members. It is very much a programme run by the Local Government Association, and we will be using them to offer training across the council. So, I realise I'm saying watch this space quite a bit, but as you'll hopefully everyone will understand, we're 4 weeks in to a new administration, and things do take a time to get off the ground. But that is certainly something we'll be working on. The minutes of the last meeting, yes, the Progressive Alliance has a new leader, who's Dave Smith, who's sitting behind me. So the leaders of the groups now are Councillor Nick Clark, leader of the Conservative group, and I'll say it for you, Nick, the leader of the largest group, and then Victor Luke Canick, who's the leader of the Independent group, and Dave Smith, who's the leader of the Progressive Alliance. So I hope that's clear. It's clear to me, but I've been living with it for the last few weeks, so perhaps that's why it's clear to me and not clear to other people. It does take some explaining, I have to say sometimes, but so far it's working, and we have great expectation that it will carry on working for the next 4 years, and also perhaps on to the next 4, 8, 12, 16. That's my ambition. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Hoffensberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question follows on quite nicely from Councillor Stamps. Thank you for some of the clarification with regards to the roles. I understand some of those roles will attract special responsibility allowances. Could you please confirm whether the budget for special responsibility allowance is now increasing? Because I think that would be pertinent to the remuneration paper that we have later on, and clarification over those roles, and therefore the budget attached to those.
Yeah, thanks very much. That's a very pertinent question. So yes, being the leader of the group does entail an uplift of council allowance. I think it's something around the £1,600 a year mark for the leader of that group. It swings around about. So, for example, Councillor Lucanik will only claim one of his allowances. He will claim his allowance as deputy leader of the council, not as leader of the independent group. So, yeah, there is a cost, but I think it's important that we organise ourselves in an effective and efficient way, and this, in my understanding, is the best way of organising. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Suiters.
Thank you. And Cliff, if I may call you that, I just wanted to ask for clarification because I was slightly confused. So if the deputy leader of the council doesn't have a portfolio, and previous deputy leaders of the council did have a portfolio, will the current deputy leader be claiming the same allowance as the person who had a portfolio in addition, so had quite a bit more work, or not?
Thanks very much, Karen. Yes, please do call me Cliff. I hope you don't mind if I call you Karen. Yes, the position that you've outlined is absolutely correct. But I would question whether there'll be less work. Victor has quite an important role, and he will be fulfilling that very fully. So he, in my estimation, will fully deserve his allowance. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Councillor Major, sorry.
Thank you very much, Cliff. As you so very kindly alluded to the representative of the sexes on the council in your speech, and the fact that you were hoping to improve on it, I have to say that I did feel that my heart sank when I saw the allocation of portfolio holders. As you well know, I have now been the chair of the Conservative Women's Organisation, an organisation that has a proud history of more than 70 years in this country of promoting more women into politics. And obviously we were delighted on the Conservative bench to this year see a parity of men against women elected to the council. We've always been very good at having a good representation of the male and females. We have a population of more women than men in the UK, 52% at the moment of women. At Suffolk and Morton Hall in particular, we have way more women than we have men. I would therefore very much look forward to seeing some improvement on portfolio holders. As you said yourself, the women we have in this council is just as well educated as men, as far as I have been told. And I think you ought to improve on the ratios we have. We must learn as a society to be representative of the people that we serve. So therefore, at the earliest opportunity, could you please try to improve on the parity so that we have equal voices heard?
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I do share your ambition that as a society we are more open and equal in terms of gender balance. All I would say though is that I wouldn't see it as men against women. I think we should all be working together. And I think it's not just a question of numbers, it's a question of access, and I've already talked a bit about diversity, and we all know that there are barriers in the way of many women getting involved in public life. It would be something I'd like to improve. As I say, we have the council we have the members we have. I'm very proud of my cabinet. I think they're an exceptionally talented group of people, and I have no intention of changing any of them at the moment. Although that can change, guys. No, but seriously, it is an important issue, and there are no easy answers. It's an issue that the whole of society has to deal with, as well as just this council. I'll just end on one final note on that, though, and that's that I'm very proud of the fact that in terms of the officers of the council, we have a positive number in terms of the relationship between male officers and female officers in terms of remuneration. So in other words, female officers are paid slightly higher overall than male officers, so which I think is a sign of our ambition as a council. So thank you for that question.
Right, thank you. Anybody else? Margaret, off you go.
Thank you, Chair. I may be flawed in my thinking, and of course I haven't got the papers in front of me. You just commented that Councillor Buchanan will only take up one of his allowances. My understanding under the Constitution is that you can only have one allowance. So actually, your comment is irrelevant, I believe, but maybe I'm flawed. Thank you.
No, you're absolutely right, but I didn't mean there's no option to take up more than one, but the Constitution is absolutely as you say, Margaret, so yes, you're correct. There would be no option to take up a second allowance. Thank you.
Any more? No? Great, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Waterman. Right, item number 6, public participation. I believe we have five people to speak, each with 5 minutes to ask a question. If we're ready, can I ask Joe Owen, please, to come to the microphone?
On January the 23rd, someone from the local planning authority came to Baldwin Avenue and stuck one A4 piece of paper on a lamppost with the text facing outwards towards the road, and then they left. This was a planning application notification for a 50-metre 5G mast from Hutchinson's 3G, giving 21 days for residents to respond. On June the 8th, engineers came and erected this 50-metre mast to the great shock, distress and anger of local residents who knew nothing about it. I've been told by our local councillor that the proper process has been followed to grant the approval for this. I wholeheartedly disagree. This is not an application for a house extension where every neighbour would have been informed and given an opportunity to make their views known. This is a mobile phone mast emitting electromagnetic frequency into the environment and into our homes 24 hours a day, the long-term health implications of which are not known. The Parliament UK website states, the government encourages LPAs to publicise prior approval applications to allow local residents to make their views known. This is important to make sure that the rollout of telecoms infrastructure is carried out in a transparent and appropriate way. The Government UK website states, it's important for all parties involved in the process to take a positive approach to consultation and engagement to include consultation notification letters to local residents, site notice, leaflets. In this instance, not one single letter was posted through our doors making us aware of the planning application, and it was stuck to a lamppost in the middle of winter when most people were trying to keep warm and worrying about their energy bills. This is definitely not transparent, nor is it appropriate. I've collected numerous signatures from the local residents who state that they would have opposed the planning application. I've brought them here with me tonight, as well as those collected on St Olave's Road, where I've discovered that a further application has been approved for a 20-metre 5G mast. Again, not one single person knew, no one had been consulted. Do you think either of these instances involved all parties in the process and took a positive approach to consultation and engagement? I wonder how you would feel if this happens to you. Apparently, although there will be an increase in the daily level of radiation emitted and absorbed due to these 5G masts, there's nothing to worry about. Truthfully, there hasn't been time to properly test whether it's safe, there's also a lack of scientific analysis on the potential impact of these masts in residential areas on not only the public health, but on the environment, the birds, the bees and the trees. These are some of the reported symptoms for those already living near 5G masts: intense headaches, ringing ears, chest pain, stomach pain, brain fog, insomnia, depression. Numerous doctors and health experts have urged for caution and a halt on the 5G rollouts due to potential long-term health implications. Have you stopped to think about the negative impact these masts will have on our local communities? These are a visual monstrosity. They could devalue our homes and impact our ability to sell. Who will compensate us for this? Who will compensate us so we can protect ourselves inside our own homes against increased levels of radiation? I would like you all to honestly think about whether you'd want one of these 5G masts next to your home, if you'd be willing to take the risk of your own and your family's health. If any of you would, then you can take the one on Baldwin Avenue, as we don't want it. Those living right next to it, like the gentleman who's currently suffering from brain cancer, or the 7-month-old baby whose immune system is still developing, the children who walk past it to go to one of the local three local schools every day, or the lady who's been told by her doctor to keep clear of increased levels of EMF, as it could be fatal to her, do not want it. The negative impact on our local community far outweighs the positive. In fact, I cannot see any positive impact in having these masts in residential areas. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jo. I'd like to invite the Councillor for Planning, Jim Thorpe, portfolio holder for Planning, Jim Thorpe.
Oh, mic's still on.
Sorry.
Yes, usual volatile subject. However, most of this stems from where we are with government. The government requires that local planning authorities support the expansion of electronic communications networks, including next generation mobile technology such as 5G. We've got to support it, they say. Further advise that local planning authorities must determine applications on planning grounds only. They should not seek to question the need for an electronic communication system or set health safeguards different from the International Commission guidelines for public exposure. Planning applications for mast and antenna development by mobile phone network operators in England are accompanied by a range of supplementary information, including the area of search, details of any consultation undertaken, details of the proposed structure, and the technical justification information about the proposed development. They are also accompanied by a signed declaration that the equipment and installation has been designed to be in full compliance with the requirements of the Radio Frequency Public Exposure Guidelines of the International Commission on Non-Ionising Radiation Protection. Applications are required to self-certify that the proposal falls within recommended guidelines. The problem we have with all of this is that this is what the government has laid down for us. There is very little room for us to argue and say we can't do it. Most of the issues coming up are, I would say, health-based or visual-based. But we can't do anything about it. The only thing we can do is to carry on lobbying the government for some sort of sense with this, that the rollout of 5G may be not the good idea they think it is, and it needs to be looked at further. But we are pretty well powerless to stop planning applications as they come in. I'm very sorry about it.
We'll go higher then.
Yeah.
Shove it.
You let it happen.
That's not actually true, because there's a council in Warrington that has.
I'm sorry, with the time that's allowed to speak, I can't let you say anything else. I'm afraid.
Well, they can shove it anyway, because we're not having it.
Please sit down.
Pull it down.
That's your chair, thank you.
We'll act then.
Get up.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll move on to the next speaker, Aaron Leeds, please.
For the past 3 years, many of us have suffered mentally from the psychological distress put upon us from a corrupt governmental system. So many were misled, coerced, pushed into making unnecessary decisions which led to people taking their own lives. Suicide rates increased because people couldn't cope with the extreme measures imposed upon our lives and our freedoms. Loss of earnings, the collapse of small businesses, from financial insecurities, from a country being led by crooks and criminals, having us shut down in a lockdown that made no reasonable sense whatsoever. Elderly relatives locked away from family interaction and communication, held like prisoners in care homes, where so many lives were lost from extreme measures, such as the use of end-of-life drugs midazolam and morphine, supplied by none other than the parasitic criminal Matt Hancock. It left many terminally ill, those with underlying health conditions, and so many seeking help and support from our National Health Service, left without treatment, medication and surgery. Many lives were lost throughout the last 3 years. So many people are unaware that our governments have been infiltrated by criminal organisations such as the World Economic Forum, run by New Age Adolf Hitler, Klaus Schwab, a demonic, satanic, screwed-up excuse of a human being. He holds no purpose to humanity, with his end goal being of eradicating and depopulating all life on Earth by 2030. All governments and councils are now governed by these criminal organisations, such as the World Health Organisation, run by a known terrorist called Tedros, having all governments hand over their people's civil liberties, freedoms and futures with the new pandemic treaty. In partnership with the UN United Nations Army, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, in an event of a future planned virus outbreak, pandemic, they would hold all rights over the world's population, having us restricted in a 15-minute smart city or town, our free movement compromised in a Big Brother asylum, with infrastructure already in place and being implemented over the lockdown, 5G antennae emitting radiation poisoning, ULEZ number plate recognition cameras, QR code scans and facial recognition, keeping us all under surveillance and watched by the 1% lifeless murdering criminal organisations and elites that control us. They would be able to force mandated poisonous mRNA experimental drugs upon every innocent man, woman and child, without consent and acceptance. A truly frightening and disturbing dystopian nightmare. We have all encountered over the past 3 years the effects these illegal, inhumane and unlawful legislations and laws have had on us and our families. So many were left with an uncomfortable and unnecessary decision as to whether they should take what was once known as a safe and effective drug. So many were left with the difficult decision whether to lose their job or take the COVID vaccination. People were made to believe that they were in danger of losing their freedoms if they did not comply, or that they may not be able to travel or see their elderly relatives in fear of infecting them, or worse, be the person that could kill their granny or granddad if they were to spread the virus. We now see the true harms and effects that these big pharma COVID experimental drugs are having on our loved ones, with Pfizer holding back the safety data of their trial stages that killed all animals in the first trial and injured and killed people in the human trial stages. Their documents are now for all to see, with over 158,000 complications and reactions listed, the worst being the newly seen spontaneous and sudden death, worryingly amongst young adults and teens, the high rise in cardiac arrest, pericarditis and myocarditis, and the huge increase in those vaccinated with blood clots. These poor souls have suffered these reactions, and they are now being gaslit and ignored by an NHS who was so insistent on vaccinating everyone who came through their doors. The so-called heroes of the COVID pandemic are now deadly silent of the vaccine injured and those that have sadly passed, leaving millions with no help or support, and with 2,000 excess deaths alone in the UK being recorded since the vax rollout, the bereaved families left behind to pick up the pieces of the government's mass genocide and crimes against humanity. I've made many friends all over the world in the last few years who have had to go through life-changing effects from having the vaccine. To name a few, Josie Barnes, Catherine Parker, Naomi Crouch, Ali Lilly, Z-Top, Michelle Utter, Adam Rowland, John Watt, Alex Mitchell, Kelly Rogers, Lindsay House, Chan Glenn, Megan Favers, Maria Claire Sanderson, Kay Lacey, Hav, Shailene and Elisa Connors. Truly brave and courageous souls who have fought back against illness, disease and major life-changing complications. They have warned others of the dangers and risks of taking these mRNA shots and saved thousands. They have my utmost respect. Vaccine-injured lives matter, and vaccine injury isn't rare, it's real. Another really difficult subject and agenda being pushed upon our children by the World Economic Forum and the WHO is the over-sexualisation of our children, with the WHO insisting and pushing the teaching and the talk of masturbation at the ages of 3 years and up, the push on transgenderism in the schooling system and the talk of body reassignment, allowing the child to choose one of 72 genders and more if they wish to change their biological status as a boy or a girl, all the while undermining the parents without consent or knowledge of such disturbing talk. I'm sure many would agree it's a form of grooming. There's also a huge push on drag queen story time, men dressed as women reading unnecessary pornographic content and material, much like this book here, which you can read afterwards. To young children, it's enough to scare any child. It's not appropriate for the education system and only ever made for adult entertainment only. It's truly sickening and disturbing. As parents, we have a moral obligation to protect our children's innocence and safety. My leaving words to the council members here present, I want you to know that in any future pandemic, lockdown restrictions on our lives or on any unethical drug mandates, we will not comply, and we will do everything in our power to protect our family values, our freedoms and our children's futures. You're either working on behalf of the best interests of our townspeople, or you're against us following corrupt governmental agendas. Moving forward, I would like the council to be aware of the huge rise in mental health issues, those suffering from the last 3 years, and offer support to those most at need. Help the vaccine injured with medical care, treatment and most importantly, the acknowledgement and support they so deserve. And most of all, let's ensure our children's innocence and safety is #1 priority within the education system. Freedom for all, footsteps of freedom.
Thank you,
Spot on,
Mr.
mate. Spot on.
Just to say one thing, Waterstones are supply, they're selling this and publishing in the bookstore as we speak. And it's truly frightening what's in this. And
Thank you, Mr. Lees. If you would like to go back to because you're taking up other people's time.
Yeah,
Same
absolutely.
people
Thank
with
you.
5G guidelines as well, pushing it.
That's what I ask. Thank you.
Could I ask the portfolio holder for regulatory governance to speak, please?
Yeah, obviously it's quite difficult to respond to such a broad question. However, clearly from the environmental point of view, I do have oversight of the environmental work of the council. As you would have heard, the Cabinet has set up an environment and sustainability working group to review the council's approach to these issues in climate change. That group will consider a very wide range of issues, including evidence on this important topic, and will be reporting back to Cabinet. I think at that point there was not a lot else I can add at this stage.
Thank you.
Shocking.
Okay. Third speaker, Dylan Roberts, please.
Is it working? Yes, it is. Okay. Thank you, Chair. Councillors, can I start with a simple statement? According to the 2022 National Census, the average age of councillors within the UK is 60. Only 16% of councillors were under 45, and only a further 10% were under 40. Often, it's rare to hear about young councillors, people who are dedicated to representing the youth voice in the community. I think it's imperative to remind councillors that from the age of 16, you may have to pay taxes on any earnings you make. Is there something that the administration can do to increase the number of people under the age of 30 standing for the role as councillor?
Thank you. I'd like to ask Councillor Higgins to answer. Thank you.
Am I heard? Yeah. Gosh, thank you. I'm looking around my colleagues at the moment. I wouldn't even like to hazard a guess of their ages. They do all look the bloom of youth. I do think, though, that very few of them probably are under the age of 30. So I think there's a very good point here. As luck would have it, I've actually been talking a lot about young people with our officers. and discovering what has been done previously and where the holes are and where we need to move forward. One of the things that came up in conversation with Ben Smith, who he has a title that doesn't sound anything like what the job that he does somewhere. It's governance and partner business. But I know him as that nice chap who helped us all through the election process. So he's actually a very good person to ask on this. Together we've been talking about how we could perhaps develop a programme that could go into colleges and into schools to encourage young people to have a say, to have a voice at local government level. One of the things that has worried me is the fact that so many young people found it very difficult to vote this time. I think our passports and our driving licence in a cost of living crisis are becoming a luxury that a lot of them are putting on one side for a while. So they need to know about the other processes they can go through to get identification, which is going to be valid when we get to the polling station. So I think actually getting them voting, getting them realising they're going to have to go through a different process to the ones that their predecessors have been to, engaging them in the way councils work, or government at all levels work, by actually going out there and being part of the programme that's going on in schools. One thing I would say, though, is that one thing we have to all do, and that's listen. We have to listen to our young people. I'm so pleased that somebody's actually presented themselves with these questions today. And I would say, if you want to drop me an email, bring yourself and any peers that are interested in government and the right to become councillors, maybe at earlier ages, come and talk to me, come and tell me your ideas. What should we be doing, in your opinion?
Thank you. Okay, we move on to the fourth speaker, Jeff Mealy, please.
Thank you. Just touching on what Aaron Lee said about the children. So I've got a couple of big names here, Alfred Kinsey and John Money. Alfred Kinsey was responsible for the sex education in public schools, and John Lowe was responsible for what we call now the LGBTQ. So I'm going to read a little bit about them and then just tell you what is going on if you're not aware, because you should be. Alfred Kinsey was a sexologist, a biologist and a professor. A social reformer, if you like. He wanted a rich society of Christian values. And he worked hard to do so, and he probably did succeed. Kinsey believes that children are sexual from birth, inherently sexual creatures from the cradle to the grave. He believed that true happiness was found in a life of perverse sexual experimentation, no matter what the age. Thank you. It came out Kinsey's research was fraudulent, based on data collected from convicted sex offenders and child molesters. Research conducted in prisons, not in everyday America. Horrific sexual experiments on children, some under the age of 1 year old. He wrote a book called Sexual Behaviour in the Human Male. It contains an infamous chart called Table 34, which documents the orgasms of very young children, including babies as young as 5 months old. For his heinous acts, instead of suffering the consequences, he is still celebrated by academia and by Hollywood. They made a film with him starring Liam Neeson called Kinsey. I'm sure you can see it on Netflix, and I suggest each and every one of you take a look at that. His idea formed the foundation for the sexual education for the public schools today. Now we come to John Money. Interesting name. He was a professor, a psychologist, a sexologist at Johns Hopkins University. Gender ideology was his thing, and he coined the phrase gender identity and gender roles. According to John Money, babies are gender neutral from birth, and it's the environment that dictates whether they are a boy or a girl. So if a boy wants to be a girl, he can, and if a girl wants to be a boy, he can. That was his take on it. So he turned his theories on the Reimer twins. Now these were two 8-month-old boys named Bruce and Brian. Now they were due for circumcision, and Bruce went up, but unfortunately the machine was faulty and burnt off his genitalia. Now the parents were absolutely distraught and didn't know what to do, but this John Money decided in his wisdom and persuaded them to transition Bruce into a girl, and that is exactly what they did. Plus he also conducted sexual abuse experiments throughout their childhood, including forcing them to simulate sex acts on each other. This he reported for 10 years and said it was a complete success, when in fact it wasn't a complete success because Bruce never fully accepted the female identity. And it was at this point that his parents told him exactly what had happened, and he transferred back to a boy named David. Now David spoke out a lot about what went on with him and his brother, with John Money, and even was on the Oprah Winfrey show, so you can check the link there, no doubt, and see him speaking out. John left it deep scars, and his brother died of an overdose at 38, and sadly David committed suicide. Unfortunately, John Money didn't respond to anything. There was no retraction, no apology. And what we find is this idea was adopted by the mainstream psychology and forms the basis of what we have today, gender ideology. And this is the problem we are facing in schools today, 4 years and above. If you don't realise, as Aaron has mentioned, there's another book, Let's Talk About Sex, which they sell as well. You can get it online. But in the schools today, 4 and above, they're teaching our children about sex, to normalise it. So by the time they're 9 and 10, they'll be able to do exactly what they've been taught, and makes it easier for paedophiles. The LGBTQ as well, if they decide they want to, 9 and 10, become a boy or become a girl, that's perfectly alright then, isn't it? Because that's what they're teaching them in schools. Well, I say it's not alright, because from 0 to 7, our children learn the most part of the information they need to process. But if they're teaching them from 4 and above than that, they really are getting a wrong picture. A real wrong picture, because they're trying to normalise everything. They're teaching consent in schools where they don't have to listen to their parents, and they can just make a decision themselves when they want to hear about the LGBTQ or about sex or about anything. I'm telling you, it is very serious, and this needs to stop. And I suggest most people in this room, in fact in this building, have sons, daughters, granddaughters, grandsons, great-grandsons and granddaughters, nieces, nephews. And I suggest, if you don't already know, looking at the school, looking at the curriculum. Because if you don't, you'll be doing an unjust service to your family. And this is detriment to what's going to happen to the future of our children. And it needs to be sorted. So I suggest, in my opinion, as well as what you need to do around the Suffolk County, which I respectfully, agree things need to be done, but as your additional homework, please check the schools that your family of next kin, whichever way, are involved in, and check the curriculum, because it will get worse unless it's stopped, and I mean that sincerely. And if you've got people like John Money and Alfred Kinsey leading the way, and which were accepted in the day, then I suggest we are in big trouble. So please, 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 do your due diligence and look into this. Please don't sit there and look at me and think, well, there's another waste of space here, because this is serious and it needs to be sorted now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Would the Leader of the Council like to reply to it?
Thank you very much. Thanks. May I call you Jeff?
Yes. May I call you Cliff?
You may say. Yeah. So, I'm not an anthropologist. I don't know in any detail the work of these people you've mentioned, so I can't really comment on that. I can comment on 2 things. One is that if you look out through the window, when you're outside the building perhaps, you'll see we're proudly flying the LGBTQ plus flag, and this administration, as the previous one, supports the rights of LGBT people. I'm very proud of the fact that we do that. You asked us to look at our own families. As you were saying, I was thinking about my own family. I think about my wider family. In my wider family, there are boys and girls. There are children who see themselves as gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender. And I have to say, they're all very happy with their identities. And as an ex-teacher, I know that schools are very careful and are very sensitive about the teaching they do on these issues, and I think it is really important that they do this teaching, because I think we understand today, perhaps better than we did in the past, that everyone has the right to their own identity, and I hope all my fellow councillors will support me in saying that I'm very proud that as a council we support LGBTQ+ rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff. No, thank you. I let you go over the time. I was very generous with you. Please respect my decision. We've got to move on to the next speaker, please.
That's why we're in the mess we are.
Yeah, you're on there.
Shocking.
Okay, could I ask fifth speaker, Donna Smith, please?
Good evening. I want to begin by asking a rhetorical question. How many of you believe Bill Gates to be the philanthropist that the media portrays him to be? We know Bill Gates is an incredibly wealthy individual, but are you all aware that by his foundation he directly funds the WEF, the CDC, the FDA, the NIH, Johns Hopkins Institute, CEPI, Pfizer, BioNTech, Oxford University, Gavi, MHRA, to name but a few. You can check this out by going onto his gatesfoundation.org/about/committed-grants if you want to find any more. We all know that COVID was the result of gain-of-function research, signed off during the Obama administration. We all know it was released to lead us into the Great Reset, Klaus Schwab et al.'s dystopian wet dream for globalisation and totalitarian technocracy. COVID was a campaign of hardcore fear porn. The Behavioural Insights team pushed a military-style psychological operation for obedience to authority, using fear, gaslighting, threats and coercion to terrorise people into submission and compliance. I'm a mother of 3 adults. My middle child has profound multi-complex disabilities and is reliant for all care needs. I provide all of her care outside of my working hours, during which she has a personal assistant. I'm a care home assistant practitioner working with people living with various stages of dementia. Back in 2020, care home residents had the most draconian measures imposed upon them. It was beyond inhumane to deny people seriously reduced or lacking capacity from seeing their loved ones. The deterioration in these vulnerable people was physically evident and their quality of life rapidly declined. How on earth can people think that segregating these people from their families and each other because they had to socially isolate was okay? Many of these vulnerable people were unable to recognise their family members' faces. Many have dysphasia, so are unable to speak to them too. Technology confused them. Staff wearing face masks frustrated them as they were unable to see the kind faces they knew or understand the muffling words spoken. This must never happen again. Matt Hancock has an awful lot to answer for. It seems at present he needs that protective ring he allegedly threw around the care homes to save himself from drowning in his own lies. We then move on to the vaccines and how these were touted as the route out of this pandemic. Our residents had their first jabs in January 2021 alongside some of my colleagues. COVID arrived in our home for the first time just under 2 weeks later. Then came the care home workers' jab mandates, imposed by the despotic banker Sajid Javid. I wrote to Jo Churchill with my concerns, but as she always does, toed the Tory party line with a cut-and-paste response. As twice vaccinated colleagues and residents contracted COVID, it was highly evident that these jabs were far from efficacious, just like the face masks. If they worked, why were so many NHS and care home workers off with COVID in 2020 when everyone wore them? I was in fact one of the 40,000 care home workers fired for exercising my fundamental human right to bodily autonomy on November the 11th, 2021. Quite the date, Armistice Day. In the Public Health Control of Diseases Act of 1984, Section 45E states that measures cannot include requirement to undergo medical treatment, which is defined to include vaccination in the event of public health response. I cannot convey the anger I felt at being fired for not taking a vaccine, especially when I've never had a flu jab and I don't take any prescribed medications. Not one of my colleagues, managers or residents' families agreed with the mandates, believing in bodily autonomy like I do myself. Residents' families were devastated when I informed them that I would likely not be working there for long and explained why. Many begged me to have that jab, but not for my own health or for their loved ones' health, but in order for me to be able to continue working with their loved ones. Can you imagine being punished for not having a medical intervention for something that is far from efficacious or safe, despite working on the front line since the beginning? That punishment extended to my partner, who is a lecturer. As the only unvaccinated staff member in his department, when one of his twice vaccinated colleagues tested positive in 2021, despite his negative PCR swab, was unable to return to work for 10 days. Unlike his negative vaccinated colleagues who were able to return as soon as they had their result. My daughter too was punished because I declined vaccination for her. Since May 2021, she has not been allowed to attend her once weekly day centre, courtesy of Suffolk County Council. I returned unvaccinated to my old job in June 2022. Today marks the 1 year since I returned. I was met with happy colleagues, residents and loved ones when they saw me. I contracted COVID for the first and only time in October 2022 and can state with 100% certainty that it was from a resident that had received 5 COVID jabs. She sadly died the day after her positive confirmation and she has several comorbidities. I had nothing more than a headache and a 24-hour temperature, the same response my body exhibits when I'm run down. My question is, Bill Gates seems to have his will turned into reality because he funds governmental and non-governmental organisations. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is the second largest donor to the WHO behind the US government and the fourth via Gavi. The World Health Organization Pandemic Treaty poses a huge threat to our civil liberties. They'll be able to call a pandemic and assert powers to implement harmful measures on a whim, ceding our sovereignty as a country. Bill Gates funds the Tony Blair Institute, and we know that Blair is pushing hard for digital identity. Digital passports are now pushed by the WHO and the UN is just the beginning of digital slavery, hence the 5G rollout. How can you assure us, the public, that our civil liberties will never be at threat again?
Thank you.
Thanks very much for your question and your heartfelt explanation of your views. I'm afraid probably most of what you said I do not agree with. However, I do respect your right to make your views clear. Unfortunately, most of what you've asked for is not within the power of this district council to effect. What I would say, and I'm sure everyone in the room would agree with this, was that during the pandemic some mistakes were made. Don't think anyone would say that everything was done perfectly, and hopefully we can learn as a society from the mistakes that were made and make sure we don't make them again. But I would also say that, from just speaking personally, I've been vaccinated. My wife's been vaccinated, some of my family, we've had no ill effects. And,
Shut up.
Quiet, please. Can you let the leader speak, please? Well, you're allowed to speak, and you went over your time. Thank you.
And you know, I agree with your basic premise that we should all follow our conscience. I commend you for doing that, and I'm sorry that you had to suffer consequences for that. But all I would say would be that you mentioned certain people, Bill Gates, Tony Blair. I don't recognise your description of them in the way you described them, and I think most people wouldn't. But thank you very much for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you. That brings public participation to an end. Thank you everyone who's attended and spoken on that. You may stay for the remainder of the meeting, and we will move on to item 7. Right, annual scrutiny reports 22 to 23rd. It is the requirement of the Constitution of the Council to receive an annual report on scrutiny committees for 22-23. This is for the outgoing chairs of both the scrutiny committees. I call upon and invite Councillor Shipp to speak regarding the report of the ONS committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. The report is laid out in front of you, highlighting the main activities of opening scrutiny over the year 22-23. What I would like to say is I'd like to thank all members for their participation in opening scrutiny, those on committee and those who are attending as part of the functions, but also participants from external bodies and officers who worked over the year on overview and scrutiny, and specifically Christine Brain for all the help she provided myself and colleagues over the year as the lead officer working with overview and scrutiny. I would have struggled without her, and I'd like to thank you very much. Moving on, I'd like to wish the new Overview and Scrutiny Committee all the very best. I look forward to potentially meeting up with you in the future, and I've no doubt that under leadership of Councillor Broughton and Vice Chair Marion Rushbrook, you'll be extremely successful, and wish you all the very best. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Councillorship? No? Okay, thank you. Let's move on to invite Councillor Holder, who was the outgoing chair of the Performance and Audit Committee.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Like my colleague Ian, I will be brief on this. We've taken those out pretty well. The fact is that the Performance Audit Scrutiny Committee oversees the financial functions of the Council and tries to be as transparent as possible. I can assure members here that the committee asks lots and lots of searching questions, and we're very lucky to have some superb officers in the finance team that can come back to us with that. These are public meetings, and it's good to see public here at our council meetings. Perhaps we could welcome them to the Performance Audit Scrutiny, because the finances of this council do cover some things that have been brought up today, such as green issues, about the use of our vehicles, all that sort of stuff. The cost to us of COVID-19 that has been dogging us for the last 3 years, as we've heard, and obviously from a financial perspective, it is important to the council, but there is the human cost behind it all, so we're quite aware of that. The other two items, the two subcommittees attached to the Performance Audit Scrutiny, are financial resilience, is where our money comes from, where it goes and where we invest it. It's very important, and Victor over there was a key member of that when I was the chair. Also, we do health and safety, which is not only for the health and safety of ourselves, the employees of the council, but the general public who interface with us. And that is actually quite an interesting little subcommittee for those who will be appointed to it. So, just like Ian, I wish my successors all the best. And there is a meeting on Thursday, which I shall be attending. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Holder? No? Okay, lovely. Let's move on. Thank you. Okay, item 9, the Independent Remuneration Panel appointment process. I call upon Councillor Gerald Kelly to introduce the item and move the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's a statutory requirement for authorities to establish and maintain an independent remuneration panel which makes recommendations to Council on the level of basic and special responsibility allowances that are paid to councillors. The current West Suffolk Council Members Allowance Scheme was approved in February 2020 for a term of 4 years and will therefore expire in February 2024. The scheme therefore needs to be reviewed by a newly appointed independent panel in the timescale so that the scheme is in place when the current scheme expires. The requirement is then that the scheme is reviewed annually. The new independent remuneration panel will review the scheme in accordance with the terms of reference over a series of meetings and interviews, and will then make recommendations to Council on the level of remuneration, allowances and expenses. These recommendations must be considered by the Council, but the Council is the decision maker. So the first stage of the process is to agree the process for appointing a new independent remuneration panel and the selection panel to undertake the appointment on behalf of the Council, to approve the terms of reference and to agree the appointment of an advisor to the independent remuneration panel. So I would therefore like to move the recommendations as set out in section 2.2 of the report that you have.
Thank you. Do I have a second then? Councillor Hyde, thank you. Did you want to speak at all?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, is there anybody else who would like to speak on this item? Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chair. In my previous role as the portfolio holder for this, I've been involved in 2 of the annual reviews. And as you say, one of the important things is they set the rate of the allowances. And going back to what was discussed under the leader's statement about special responsibilities, over the 2 periods I did and before that, the actual roles that have been identified have been fairly static. So when the advising panel looks at it, they determined whether the roles have changed, whether the responsibilities have changed. They look at what's going on outside, they look at cost of living. They also need to look at and respect the expectations of the general public in the payment of these allowances. And I would therefore ask the portfolio holder, we have seen from the changes to the way the administration has been set up this time that certain responsibilities have been dropped. For example, the leader is the leader of the council. The element of that allowance that he received for being the leader of a group is no longer there. Similarly, there is a group of portfolio holders, cabinet members, and they receive an allowance for being a cabinet member. We have a deputy leader who is a member of the cabinet and has that responsibility as the deputy, but does not have responsibility as a portfolio holder. So I would just ask that the independent remuneration panel is made aware of these changes and can take this into account, because there are clearly new categories that need to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bob. If I ask Councillor Kelly to reply, is anybody else who would like to ask any questions or comment? No? Excellent. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you very much for that, and yes, understand entirely, and that is exactly my expectation. I would repeat, of course, that it's not the independent remuneration panel that makes any decisions, they are for council itself. And quite clearly the council will be able to take the report and either accept it or completely change it in effect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we need to take a vote on this one. And who's in favour of the motion, please? And against? Any abstentions? That's unanimous, thank you. Okay, we now move to item 10, which is the Constitution Review Group, and I invite Councillor Kelly again, please.
Thank you again, Chair. As you will all be aware, the Constitution serves as the overriding framework for the way we work, make decisions and work with our officers. It's therefore imperative that the Constitution remains current and continues to evolve in accordance with changes in legislation, policy and procedure. It's also recognised that there may be changes or amendments proposed which require further assessment to help understand whether the change is necessary and appropriate. It's for this purpose that the Constitution Review Group was set up, so that a smaller group of members may undertake those assessments on behalf of the Council. Again, the group will have no decision-making powers, but will make recommendations to Council. I therefore move the recommendation that the Council continues to operate the Constitution Review Group in accordance with the terms of reference that we have before you, and as well the membership as set out once again in section 2.2.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hyde. Thank you. Did you want to speak at all?
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else would like to comment on this motion? No? Okay, let's take the vote. All in favour? And against? Any abstentions? It's all moved. Thank you very much. Okay, item 11. Do we have any urgent business? No? Let's move on from that then. I believe we've concluded the meeting. Well done. Thank you very much.